I'm Rachel here with my cat Leia to talk about my January reading wrap-up. I wanted to start the new year off with a bang and a lot of reading, but it actually took me a bit to get through my usual 8 books. I read the first few over the course of a few weeks, and then sped up for the final ones. I actually finished the last book on the first day of February, but shh. The first book I finished in January feels appropriate to talk about for Black History Month in February. It's Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It's essentially a book about what it means to be Black, or an immigrant, or a Black immigrant in the United States. There's also a subplot about what it's like to be a Black immigrant in the UK. Adichie is a funny and detailed writer, and she works with subtlety to flesh out a Femilu's life dealing with US tribalisms, microaggressions, and systematic bigotry. The characters were all fully formed, and Adichie didn't do any hand-holding while describing life in Nigeria. But I really wasn't crazy about the romance, except as backstory. I found Efemelu and Obinze's stories more interesting when they were apart. This seems like a literary fiction problem. I'm not thrilled with the plot, but I still love the characters, writing, and themes. And I'm definitely interested in reading more of Adichie's backlist. Next, I picked up The Mapmakers' Daughter by Laurel. This novel chronicles a 15th century converso woman during the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal. Converso is a word used for a Jew who converted, usually under extreme duress, to Catholicism during this time, but they still secretly practiced the old religion. Some descendants of conversos still secretly practice Judaism or have incorporated Jewish practices into their worship without joining mainstream Jewish communities. Corona has her protagonist Amalia live a long life so that she can witness several historical events leading up to the Jewish expulsion from Spain in 1492. I'm usually not a fan when an invented character attends to kings and queens, especially when part of a despised minority. In general, I found much of Amalia's behavior to be pretty modern, and that technically she should have received more backlash for it. The writing could be pretty purple too. But I also felt a deep affinity for this novel, as Amalia probed what it means to be Jewish in this often overlooked place and time. And I enjoyed learning about the history, particularly about the Abravanel family. Judah Abravanel and his kin were among the only semi-accepted practicing Jews in Spain at that time. Corona did her research, and I'm grateful for that. After this, I finished the Best American Short Stories of 2016, which I read on my iPad, so I thought I should just insert a picture. It's my annual tradition to start off the new year with this anthology, and this was a great addition. Under Junot Diaz's guest editorship, we had the most diverse array of short stories that I've ever read in this collection, including one by Adichie. I also really liked Diaz's opening essay, where he focused on his own relationship to short stories, rather than spouting off metaphors about the future of the craft. I didn't love every story, of course, but I highlighted 6 of 20 in my Goodreads review as my favorites. My number 1 favorite was the thoroughly executed ghost story that left me on the edge of my seat while I was waiting for a train, The Prospectors by Karen Russell. I recognize this author's name and many others because I'm an avid listener to the Book Riot podcasts, so thanks guys. I moved on to my least favorite read of the month with Here Be Dragons, Tales of DRAGONCON, edited by Bill Fawcett. DRAGONCON is a big science fiction, fantasy, and comics convention that takes place in Atlanta over Labor Day weekend. I've missed attending these past several years and was feeling nostalgic. But I gave this my first 2-star review since 2015. I was expecting nonfiction when I got short stories instead, but I can't hold that against this. The writing was just really bad, and even offensive to some DRAGONCON attendees. The manuscript was littered with grammatical mistakes as well. I enjoyed certain stories, or at least parts of certain stories, my favorite being about a Fury who comes to the con and gets on the wrong side of Hades when she refuses to enact his will. But otherwise, big disappointment. I had to return this audio CD collection to the library already, so here's a picture. Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. It was published last year and is a very popular book among science fiction fans. It juxtaposes the 17th century Enlightenment against a 25th century reality, and Palmer has the academic background to make the world building incredible. Too Like the Lightning is a setup for a larger series where it seems we will continue to deal with global political intrigue juxtaposed against the possible protagonist, Bridger, who has godlike powers in this largely atheist society. There's also a lot of question about how reliable our narrator, Mycroft Canner, a notorious criminal, actually is. But overall, I found the character development to be a little weak. Palmer is definitely more interested in her big picture rather than being down in the muck with exploring human emotions. I don't think I'll be continuing with this series, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it nominated as part of the BookTube SFF Awards. My favorite read of the month was The Little Russian by Susan Sherman. This book follows Bertha, a rich Jewish woman under the Russian Empire who loses it all during the Great War and the Bolshevik Revolution. Her husband is a member of the Jewish Bund, an organization that smuggles weapons to Jewish towns suffering pogroms, violent attacks by non-Jewish mobs, across the countryside. He has to leave the country when an operation goes wrong, and Bertha chooses to stay with her children, much to her later chagrin. It's a wonderful story for exploring the lives of Russian Jews, and particularly how they are often cast as outsiders, no matter the broader changing politics. Bertha and other characters are flawed and intriguing as they navigate anti-Semitism, financial issues, and their relationships to the Jewish community. It's obviously a dark and violent book, and perhaps I'm biased by current events, but the cynicism spoke to me. But ultimately, the character stories are complex and transcendent beyond that. Next, I read The Beautiful Possible by Amy Gottlieb, which I also loved. We follow Walter, a German-Jewish Holocaust refugee, as he studies at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York in the 50s. There, he becomes close, sometimes too close, to a betrothed couple. The man, Saul, is in training to be a rabbi, and the woman, Rosalie, gets involved with Walter. But it's more than a tawdry adultery story. It spans decades, and it's about how these people look for spiritual meaning. Saul is a Talmudic scholar thrust uncomfortably into suburban synagogue life. Rosalie is drawn to unpopular Hasidic mystics in a time when women aren't supposed to have many opinions anyway. Walter is an atheist-turned-theology professor. Though he's Jewish, he's more into Eastern religions after studying at an ashram in India. Gottlieb weaves all of this literature and poetry and religious texts together to describe the clash of their normal lives with their inner desires. I loved it because I'm in love with the idea of chasing down spiritualism this way. Fiction and religion have always inhabited a similar place in my heart. I also really loved the glimpse into mid-century religious Jewish life. And finally, I read Shylock Is My Name by Howard Jacobson for my Jewish book club. This book is part of the Hogarth Shakespeare series, where modern-day authors are commissioned to write retellings of Shakespeare's plays. Unsurprisingly, this one is a retelling of The Merchant of Venice. Jacobson sort of retells the play twice. He thinks up a modern-day scenario, and then he also brings Shylock back from the dead to talk to his compatriot. A lot of the novel is rambling kvetching about Jewish angst, and I didn't really get invested until the plot started. Basically, instead of asking for a loan, the Antonio and Bassanio characters ask Shylock's counterpart, Strulovich, for an expensive painting, because they are all in the art-dealing world in upper-class Manchester. And the Jessica character, instead of running away to marry a goodly Christian, runs off to have copious sex with a Nazi-saluting pedophile. She was 15 when the sex started. It's a satire, and honestly, the modern-day plot doesn't interest me much now. Didn't interest my book club much either. We had record-low attendance and spent most of the hour talking about other books. I guess what I'm really interested in is the continuing conversation about the meaning of The Merchant of Venice. How human is Shylock? How wrong were Portia and the Christian men meant to be for being anti-Semitic? In this novel, the Shylocks are definitely people, prickly ones but explored, and the Christians don't have the same moral high ground. These Christian characters definitely come off as shallow and hateful, and personally I think that's the best revenge ever for The Merchant of Venice. As for what I'm reading right now, well, I'm still big into the Jewish theme, though soon I plan to pick up some books from the library for my Bronte Reading Month. But for now, I'm reading Torah Commentary from this book. During the year, Jews read from mapped-out chapters of the Torah called Parshot. In this book, female rabbis have written commentaries on each of the Parshot, often highlighting lady characters of the Bible. But this week's essay links the struggle for the Israelites to achieve freedom from Egypt to the struggle for women to achieve political and social equality to men. Here's a quote from this week's essay, Power and Liberation by Rabbi Lucy H.F. Dinner. Freedom for the Israelites went beyond their release from Pharaoh's grip. The Israelites did not move from being in slavery into assuming the dominating power that enslaved them, but rather they sought their own vision of freedom in line with their belief in one God. Women reaching new freedoms in the workplace, political arena, university, and home do not automatically assume the roles once held by men. Instead, we forge a new path reflective of our own wisdom and vision. Women are changing not only the roles we play in society, but we are also taking part in a redefinition of society. Complete freedom entails men and women both coming to understand freedom and power in a new light. You can find a link to my literary newsletter where I publish my longer written reviews, plus other bookish geekiness, down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.